Hello and welcome to a new episode of Other Record Labels. I'm your host, Scott Orr. Thank you so much for joining, where we talk about the art of starting and running a record label. It's such an exciting process. Before we dive into today's interview is with this Indian label called Pagal, Haina, and it is such a cool label. What a great story. They've had such incredible success in their short little lifespan. And they have some incredible releases. I went through everything that they have before I did the interview, and just some fantastic records that they've put out. And they've seen incredible success too, including one of their artists being featured on Barack Obama's playlist, which we get into. But this is a great conversation. I really hope you enjoy it. Before we get into that, I want to remind you, if you are new to the show, or if you've been listening for a long time, thank you. But please go to otherrecordlabels.com. There is a lot going on, and there are some new things being added, including some new resources and some incredible new tools that are coming for you at the end of this month. But regardless, if you haven't been yet, you can download our checklist for how to start a record label or our free guide for record labels. Get all that and more. You can also reach out to me at otherrecordlabels.com. Please enjoy this interview. Can you help me pronounce your label name?
Yeah, it's called Pagal, Haina.
Okay, Pagal, Haina.
Yeah.
And what does it have a meaning?
Yeah, Pagal and Haina are Hindi words.
Okay.
Pagal means crazy.
Okay.
And Haina means, when you're talking to somebody and you say, that movie was crazy, right?
Yes.
Or crazy, no? So that's pretty much it. It's like crazy, right?
Oh,
and Haina
I
is
see.
like that. But it's actually... Pagal and Haina were the first two Hindi words my girlfriend and my partner learned.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
I went to film school. In Sydney.
Okay.
That's where we met, and those were the first two words she learned. So I started making mixtapes for her, and I just decided to call it Pagal Haina Records, and that's how it began.
I've got to write this out because I want to start saying it. I think that would be because those are the first two Hindi words that I've learned.
Sweet.
So that's really cool. That's a great name, and the logo is interesting too. But I can't make out what it is.
What do you?
What do I see?
Is there anything that comes to mind? Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Well, let me pull it up again, just because I have, and I mean, I'm kind of bad with visuals because I see something and then I think it's something. Hold on, I'm typing it in right now. Just 1 second. My first thought was an elephant. Is that right?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, so it's essentially an elephant with the tusk also being
a music note.
A musical note.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
It also looks like it could be like the top half of a skull.
Yeah.
In a way.
It could be. It could. I mean, some people also see old forts and stuff.
Yes.
So a couple of people have also felt like those were arches from a fort, etc. So I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think the eye of the elephant and the trunk is pretty clear. So
yeah.
But yeah, it's very minimal. I like it a lot, and I think I like that it's abstract in a way.
Yeah.
So tell me how this all came together then, because I was reading about you and I was reading about the Sydney component, but can you tell me about how the label all came together and when?
Sure. So I think the seed was first planted in Sydney.
Okay.
A friend of mine and her sister had an act together called She of the Woods. And I saw a couple of their videos online, and I went to one of their gigs, and their music really spoke to me. So I thought to myself that I'd like to be involved in some way. At this stage, I had no intentions of working in music because my background is film, TV, and theater.
Okay.
That's what I did for many years. And then I went to Sydney to study film further because I wanted to learn how to work with the film camera. And that was 2007, which is when I met my partner. Her name is Lucy, who's my partner in life and at work.
Okay.
And we run Pagal Haina together. But yeah, so that's, I mean, She of the Woods is how it started because it made me want to be involved in some shape or form. I didn't know what that would be, but because I'd spent so long working in film and theater as a producer, and I did a bunch of editing and sound design and things of that nature. So music was always a integral part of my life, but I never saw it as potential work opportunity in terms of me actually working in the music business.
Are you a musician?
But, no, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
I'm not a musician, but I've always, I mean, from a very young age, I've always been into music in a big way.
Yeah, for sure.
Then I used to pretend to be a DJ in college to make some money on the side.
Yeah.
So pretend in the sense that back then I was into psychedelic trance music in a big way.
Okay.
And so I got an opportunity to play that at a bar and make a little bit of money. And before that, I used to play a lot of music with words, I like to call it, because there's not a lot of mixing one has to do there. It's just picking the right song to follow what you're playing now. You know, it was more curation than actually mixing. And that's something I feel like I've always had an affinity for, and I feel like I have a decent taste when it comes to that.
Yeah.
So that's what I used to do, and then I was into psytrance in a big way, and I also got a chance to start playing that. So I kind of found a way to sort of fade in, fade out, and get away with it without looking like a fraud. And I managed to do it for a couple of years, and it helped me make a little bit of money on the side. But then I stopped and got on with other things. So like I was saying, film, TV, theater stuff. And then I went to study in Sydney, and that's where She of the Woods happened. And so for a while, I was thinking about what I could do, and I started reading a little bit. And I felt like, you know what? I feel like I could manage them, because I felt like there were a lot of parallels between being a producer for film and being a manager in the music business. So I reached out to them, and they were up for it. But in hindsight, it was obviously a bad idea, because a few months after that, I came back to India.
Okay.
And they were in Sydney and just starting out, and I was in Delhi, and I barely knew anything about the music business. So that sort of fell through.
Sure.
But I think that's how the seed was planted. And so from that point on, I started doing a lot of reading, and I discovered Reverb Nation.
Okay.
And at the time, I felt like, wow, here's a platform that helps you streamline a bunch of things when it comes to the music business. And so I spent some time on it. But beyond that, it was just a lot of reading and a lot of listening to podcasts and watching videos on YouTube and trying to piece things together in my head. But yeah, that's how it started. That's how the seed was planted.
That's really cool. So you are still in India, and where are you finding these bands then? And what connection does India have with the label, and what connection does Sydney have with the label?
So Sydney is where I came up with Pagal Haina, like I said. But that was also where the seed was planted in terms of wanting to understand and explore more about the music business. It was where the thought first crossed my mind, and then I came back to India. And even though I came back and I got a job working as a producer for a production house that did commercials and short films and things of that nature, I was still on the side reading up as much as I could and trying to understand more. And I came across an artist on Reverb Nation who I felt like I could help, because he was also based in Delhi and I was based in Delhi. And I felt like, you know what, he's starting out and I want to start out. So let me reach out and see if he'd be keen. And I did reach out, and he was keen because it was early days for him. He was still in school or just out of school, but he had a bunch of songs on Reverb Nation, a couple of which I kind of liked. So at the time, it was just, he took a chance, because I obviously, other than the work that I'd done in other aspects of the creative arts, specifically in the music business, I didn't have any experience at all. So it was one of those things. I reached out and he said, yeah, why not? And that's how it started. We put out a couple of songs, and in that about a time, I moved back to Sydney.
Okay.
So in 2010, I moved back to Sydney because my partner Lucy was still there.
Okay.
And we wanted to live together. So I moved back, and then I was in Sydney for the next almost 3 years.
I'm sorry, what year was this started? Like, when did you first start working with that artist from Reverb Nation?
That was late 2008.
Oh my goodness. That's been a long time.
It has.
12 years.
Been a long time.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks,
okay,
Doug.
sorry, keep going. So you moved back to Sydney.
Yeah. So late 2008, his name was Kunal. Late 2008 is when I started working with him. And 2009, I spent most of the year traveling because my partner Lucy came to India and she spent about 10 months here. So for those 10 months, I wasn't really doing much on the work front. I just took the time to travel around the country and show her around and things of that nature. But during this time, I was actively reading and learning more about different aspects of the business and trying to do whatever little we were doing with Kunal at the time. And then 2010 is when I moved back to Sydney. So
okay, and you had still just had one artist at this time in 2010?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just the one artist, and the first release was a 3-song EP that we put out, which happened after I had moved back to Sydney. So that was, I think, early 2010.
Okay. And so when did things kind of take off and you start adding more artists to your roster and things started to really flourish for you?
So that was later in 2010. That's when I met or came across music by an artist by the name of Prateek Kuhad.
Okay.
He's the one artist that I worked with for the longest and has been the most successful in terms of everyone that I worked with thus far.
Okay.
He was, So that at the time he's from India, but at the time he was studying at NYU in New York, and I was in Sydney. But a really close friend of mine and his sister went to law school together.
Oh, okay.
So my friend reached out to me and said, "Hey, my friend's younger brothers just started writing a few songs. I know you're keen to work in music. Would you want me to connect both of you, and maybe you can listen to the songs and see if it's something you want to be a part of?"
Sure.
So she connected me with Prateek, and he sent me a couple of his songs, which when I first listened to them, didn't really speak to me.
Okay.
But a month or so later, I remember it was late at night, and I came across them again on my computer, and I listened. And this time, I felt a connection to the songs, which goes to tell you it has so much to do with time and space and mindset when you're listening, and things of that nature. But this time they spoke to me, so I reached out to him and I said, "Hey man, I've been listening to your songs and I feel like there's something there. I mean, I feel a connection, and if you're keen, maybe we can figure out a way to work together.
Yeah. Well, and I mean,
So
yeah, and this artist you're talking about, so you were working with them in the early stages of their career, is that right? Because I mean, they're pretty huge now from my perspective, like 1 million listeners on Spotify.
yeah, so I actually managed him from the very start till late 2018.
Wow.
So it hasn't been that long.
That's incredible.
Yeah, 8 years.
Amazing.
Is the amount of time I spent working on his career, and that was in various capacities. I mean, primarily, I see myself as a manager with a focus on artist development.
Sure.
But given the fact that there isn't much of an infrastructure for independent artists in India, if you want to put out releases a certain way and have the kind of impact you want, then you have to fulfill all the other roles also.
I see.
So for the first 5 or 6 years of his career, I was the manager, I was the booking agent, I was the tour manager, I was the record label, I was the publicist.
Wow.
I was the one overseeing all the merch we did, all the social media, all of those things I was involved in a big way.
You must feel proud that it worked. I mean, I'm looking at his bio now, and Rolling Stone India said he's one of the country's leading singer-songwriters, and Spotify playlists, it seems like he's on 1 million of them. You must feel proud that to work with an artist from beginning to the height of a career.
Yeah. And I feel like he has a long way to go. So
right.
Yeah, but I am very proud of all the work we did together and everything we achieved. He was, in fact, on Obama's list of favorite songs last year.
No way.
So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So he's definitely one of the breakthrough artists from India when it comes to the independent landscape, because till the last... or not the last now, till the second to last release, which is an EP called Cold Mess, for which we managed to find some support. Everything that came prior to that was completely and fiercely independent in terms of everything was something we did together.
That's great. And so you must have, that must have been like, getting a university degree and running a record label with all of the experience you got with him.
Absolutely. And I have to say, we were very lucky because at the early stages of his career, his family was very helpful, both in terms of support and monetarily.
Okay.
So they were able to put some funds into us being able to put out records a certain way and being able to do some shows and having an aesthetic and being able to get the songs mixed well and mastered properly, and all those aspects that have to come together holistically. I feel like we were really lucky because we were able to do some of those things at a certain standard because we had the help, and from that point on it just grew. I mean, obviously the songs speak for themselves and they really resonated with people in India and overseas now. Mm-hmm. But you always need that jump start to be able to, gain some miles quickly.
Oh, sure.
And we were able to do that in the first few years. But yeah.
Were you managing his career from India or from Sydney?
So for the first 2 years, 2011, basically, I mean, from what I recall, it was late 2010 when we decided to work together. Mm. But over the next 2 years, I was in Sydney and he was still at NYU because he was finishing up.
Oh, right.
So for those 2 years, we worked from our respective cities.
Sure.
And obviously things were slower because I was still working as a freelancer. So I was still doing a lot of producing and editing and on the side, spending time trying to build this. And he was still at uni and trying to do music on the side. So in those first 2 years, I think we only met a couple of times. And both of those times were when we came back to India for a bit of a break.
Right.
And we tried to do whatever little we could in those times here. But for the most part, things, I'd say Pagal Haina started as a full-time business in late 2012, which is when I moved back to India, and early 2013, Prateek moved back to India. So technically 2013 onwards is when both of us worked at it full-time.
And were things starting to move a lot quicker because you guys were together?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like there were signs which made us move back to India. A couple of things happened in those 2 years, which to me were signs of giving this a real go.
That's cool.
So we talked about it, and he took up a job which wasn't really working out for him, for a finance-based company, and I was doing my thing in Sydney, and these signs pretty much were the guiding light.
What were they? Can you share one of them with me?
Yeah. So one was at the time, I mean, it was obviously, now that you think back, it doesn't seem like a very big deal. But at the time, just to get featured by a blog in the US felt like a big thing. So it was a blog, or it was a website. I don't know if it exists anymore, but it was called Indaba Music.
Okay.
And so there was some contest on their website, which he won. So he got a chance to fly to New Orleans to play at a festival there.
Oh, wow.
And a couple of his songs got featured as videos. So he went to their offices in New York, and they made a couple of videos which went up on YouTube, etc.
That's cool.
That was the first sign. Then there were a couple of others. One was he made a video of himself playing a song called Raat Razi, which has become one of his most popular songs. But he made, which you'll see on YouTube if you search it, and it's really, really simple video in the sense that he's just sitting there in his shorts playing the song on his couch in his apartment in NYU, and he sent me that video, and I felt like it was worth sharing it with a platform in India that was doing a lot of work when it came to independent music. They had started a company that had started their own festival, and there was a music website called NH7, which used to feature a lot of upcoming independent artists from India and stuff.
Okay.
So I sent them the video and asked them, hey, would you be keen to upload this to your YouTube? And they responded and said, yeah, we'd love to. We dig the song. So they uploaded the video on YouTube, and it started getting a decent amount of views and plays. And that led to them calling us and offering us a slot at their festival in late 2012.
Wow.
In India, which I think was the mini victory that, at least for me, was the point that I decided, this is worth giving a real go.
Yeah.
I think that's what pushed us to make that.
That's really good for you to recognize.
Not make the decision, but it pushed us over the edge in terms of, okay, this is something we have to look at seriously.
I mean, it's really good to recognize that and then to take that leap of faith. Not a lot of people would do that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was. Because for me, at the time, I was about a year and a half away from being able to qualify to apply to become an Australian citizen.
Okay.
And he had finished NYU, and he's a math graduate. I mean, his major was math, and he got a job at a company in New York. So that didn't work out for. I mean, he wasn't very happy in that job,
Right.
so he decided he doesn't want to do it anymore. And I think that was the point for him where he decided, you know what, I really want to give music a real go. So it's now or never. I mean, this job is not working out, so I might as well take a year and give music a real chance.
Well, that's so great that it worked out. I want to ask you, going back to when you were starting to promote his career, what is it like, promoting an Indian artist to American blogs and to American curators? I would imagine that it would be hard to promote to them because there might be this a cultural difference or something. So how has that been for you?
So I didn't really focus on the US to begin with.
Okay.
Because we had both moved back to India, I focused on India for a few years because I wanted to, from the very start, my aim was for him to get to a point where he can make a comfortable living doing music.
Sure.
It was never, I never really thought beyond that when we were starting out. It was just to be able to get to a point where we can make a living.
Yeah.
Doing music full time. And he always wanted to be a songwriter more than a performing artist.
Okay.
And so in the first few years, we were hyper focused on India and trying to build an audience for him here. Because, I mean, just in terms of sheer size and how dominated by Bollywood the market is,
okay.
To be able to start to make a little bit of noise compared to other parts of the world in sheer numbers is a lot more. So, so it was.
So you're
mostly
saying there's enough of an audience in India, you don't even need to worry about America to make a living. Is that what you're saying?
Well, what I'm saying is, no, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, I felt like it was important to focus on India for the first few years.
Okay.
And to build a really strong presence and following in India. Because if we were doing well in our home territory and we had the numbers to go with it, we would be much better placed to then start looking at the world.
I see. Okay.
And that's pretty much how it turned out, in the sense that for the first, 2013 is when he put out his first real release. When I say real release, I mean one that we actually had a release plan for and we thought it through.
Yeah, sure.
He had put out 3 songs before that, but those were just to have something out there. So we have something to work with, because I was in Sydney, he was in the States. And in those 2 years, there was nothing to work with in terms of how can we build something if there isn't a single song out there for us to work with.
Right.
So he put out a 3-song EP, which, he obviously wants to forget everything about. But
we all have those.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I look back also, I cringe at the way we put it out and what we did. But I also know the value it had in helping us.
Right, sure. And you haven't,
things.
Have you removed it, or have you kept it as
No.
Good for you.
Up there. Yeah.
Good.
But I look back and I feel like in those 2 years where we were living in different cities, had we not had those 2 or 3 songs, we wouldn't have been able to start from the point we did when we moved back to India in 2000. So 2013 is when we put out his first real release. It was an EP in Hindi called Raat Razi.
Okay.
And once that EP came out, we were off to the races, because it was received really well. And the company that I mentioned to you, which offered us a slot at their festival in 2012, in 2013, they did that same festival in 4 cities in India. And on the back of that EP, we got offered a slot in every one of the cities they did the festival in. So 2013 onwards is when things actually started to pick up.
So when you're, sorry, if I can just ask you, when you're promoting in India, do the audience at home, do they prefer lyrics in Hindi or in English, or what does better?
I mean, that's a no-brainer. Definitely Hindi, just because the sheer number of people that speak and understand Hindi.
Okay.
Far outnumbers the number of people who consume music in English.
Okay.
For that matter, there's so many regional languages in India also.
Right.
So there's other languages between after Hindi that would probably be higher up on the list than English in that sense.
Okay.
So, which is why in India, for an artist or band that writes and performs solely in English, I personally feel like there's a glass ceiling.
Oh,
There's only so far you can go.
Interesting.
After which you have to start looking outside of India, because just in terms of sheer numbers, the people who would understand or connect with the music you're making, obviously in terms of numbers, there's a lot more people outside of India who listen to music in English than in India.
Okay.
So from that perspective, definitely Hindi dominates the market in India. But that's also part of the reason why I felt like it was a good idea to start with a Hindi record, because you can reach those many more people,
Right. Right.
And what followed was his first full-length record, but that was in English.
Okay.
Which was 2015.
And was that is that when you started to begin to move outside of?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the back of that album, we applied to SXSW, and he got selected for an official showcase.
Wow.
At South by Southwest, and then a bunch of other showcases around the world followed. So he got selected to play at the Canadian Music Week. He got selected to play at a music conference in Singapore. The name is slipping my mind. He got selected to play at Big Sound in Brisbane, in Australia. He got selected to play at Mid-M at Cannes. So all of this happened on the back of that record, which I'm really proud of, because as a label, that's the first full-length album we put out. And,
now
we put it out. Yeah.
Getting accepted to these showcases, that's still a big investment, right? To fly to these locations, you're on the hook for that. That must have been another leap of faith to invest in those.
Yeah, absolutely.
And did they pay off?
I think there have been a lot of those. Yeah, definitely paid off, because if I think back, something good came off each one of those experiences.
Oh, that's great.
Whether in terms of building relationships with other music-based comrades around the world, or his music reaching a new set of people in different territories around the world.
Sure.
Or just the fact that here's an Indian artist who's been selected to play at all these conferences. There haven't been a lot of Indian artists that have.
Yeah, right.
Over the years. So that in itself was a talking point. And the fact that he put out a Hindi record and then put out an English record, and he's equally adept at writing and singing in both. So I think there were a lot of things along the way that did add to the holistic picture, and taking a chance with these music conferences definitely paid off, in my opinion.
I want to ask you about India again. What is the format that's popular for you guys? I mean, it seems to be like Spotify seems pretty strong, based on your playlists and based on his profile that I was looking at. Is vinyl something that you guys do, or is CDs have CDs died or still have a life? What kind of formats are popular over there?
So CDs have died completely.
Okay.
vinyl is also one of those novelty things at the moment in India, where if you do have the budgets or the support or a label to be able to, produce some vinyl, then it happens. But other than that, it's primarily digital. And even on that front, Spotify hasn't been in India for very long. I think it's only been a couple of years.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken. Before that, it was a few other streaming platforms. But the whole concept of streaming is also still on its way up in India, because honestly, the music business here, at least when I first started out, was the wild, wild west. It still is in a lot of ways, because if you were to compare to established markets like US, UK, or Australia, the independent music industry in India has only really been around. And when I say only really been around, I mean where you can start to call it a bit of an industry. I think it's only been about 15 years.
Interesting.
In total, 15 to 20 years. So compared to the rest of the world, we're at least 40, 50 years behind in terms of where things are at for young and upcoming artists and the infrastructure you need around them and things of that nature. So
does that work to your advantage in any way, that you're, one of the first to embrace it?
I mean, I don't know if I'd call it an advantage, but it definitely helped to start when I did, because by that time there were already plenty of signs that this was only going to grow from that point on.
Right.
So from that perspective, I think the timing was right, because now things obviously coronavirus has killed things in a big way.
Sure,
but till before that happened, things were headed in the right direction. But, it's the other really important factor to consider about India is that we as a people are still not used to or haven't yet fully come to terms with paying for music. Attaching a monetary value for music is still a fairly new concept of India. It's obviously changing these past 5-10 years, but piracy was rampant.
Really?
And, so I used to download music illegally for free till I started this label. But once I did, I actually realized the value of a song.
Sure.
Yeah.
Till
that point, everyone in India was just downloading music and movies for free. So buying tickets to shows, paying for music, or at the time when we started, CDs were still around. Buying CDs or merch or buying tickets to shows, or now having a premium streaming subscription, all of these things are still on their way up in India. So even though things, obviously, in the past 5 to 7 years, there's been a lot of progress, but compared to the rest of the world, a lot of those concepts that are ingrained in a music fan outside of India are still something that people are coming to terms with,
Well, that's kind of hopeful too. It's kind of exciting that there is room to grow. So when you are experiencing success, hopefully just keep doing what you're doing, and there'll be more to come.
Yeah,
I would be inspired by that. So how did then you get some more artists onto your label, and specifically, I mean, a lot of English artists and indie rock artists. How did the label grow from this one artist that you invested so much time into, and now you have so many artists on your roster? I imagine, with the success of your first artist, you must have had artists knocking on your door saying, "Do that for me as well. Get me on Obama's playlist."
Well, technically, I wasn't around when the Obama playlist happened.
Okay, that's all right.
but it was definitely, one of the song that made it to the playlist was a release I worked on in a massive way. So there's that. But coming back to the roster, I'd already found 2 other artists that I really wanted to work with before I moved back to India. So this was, again, in 2012. and I have a YouTube channel to thank for it. It's a YouTube channel called The Music Project.
Okay.
I'll share a link with you.
Yeah.
But at the time, they were doing a lot of great work in terms of identifying young and upcoming artists in India and shooting a video for them that's then sat on their YouTube channel. And it was a YouTube channel that was started by a fairly prominent media network. So they already had a fair number of subscribers, and to me they played a really massive role because they unearthed a lot of really great talent in India. And I found the next two artists that I started working with on this YouTube channel, and I reached out to both of them before I'd come back to India. So it was, by the time I moved back in late 2012, there were 3 acts or 3 artists that I was working with, or I was going to start working with, because I only met the other 2 after I came back. But yeah, their names are Shantanu Pandit and Rounak Maiti. So yeah.
Okay.
I started, so for almost 3 years or 2.5 years, they were the only acts that I was working with. And then I signed another band called Run It's the Kid, who, in my opinion, is one of the best bands in the country. So then that happened.
Were these English artists?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're all English artists.
And so what changed? Why were you focusing on English music?
I was just focusing on music I loved.
Okay.
You know, it was never a business-led decision to work with an artist who writes in Hindi. It just so happened that Prateek was able to write and perform in both English and Hindi.
Okay.
You know, it was never a conscious decision to go after somebody who writes in Hindi.
Okay.
I mean, I've grown up in India, and English has always been my go-to language.
Interesting.
You know? So, and that's the case for a lot of people that are educated in terms of who go to English medium schools where you're taught everything, where English is the primary language. There's many people in India who think and speak in English before Hindi, perhaps. Hindi is our mother tongue. It comes naturally to us because we grew up with Hindi, but it's the same with English. You know, everybody who's middle class or upper middle class in India and went to a English medium school has grown up with English and Hindi as their primary languages. So, yeah.
Is there a default in the music scene? Is there a default language? Like if you are starting a rock band or electronic music band or hip hop, what do kids, quote unquote, gravitate towards these days? Is it English?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of really great music coming out of India, which is in regional languages.
Okay.
You know? There's so many languages that people speak in India. Every state has its own language.
Right.
And some states have more than one. So there's so many different dialects also. So it's, and that's changing now. You know, I think artists are more and more confident about embracing and owning the regional languages, especially if they feel like it's a strong suit for them. You know? So I think, but that being said, English, or rather Hindi and English in that order when it comes to independent music, are the major languages.
I want to ask you about, when I was researching your label and researching an Indian label and going to your Spotify playlist of all your releases, everything was, rock and indie folk and lo-fi. And I was surprised by that. Do you find it a challenge to kind of shake that Bollywood image that a lot of foreigners have of India? Yeah,
definitely. That's a massive challenge for anybody who's trying to break through from India, because it comes with a preset notion.
Yes.
Which can be hard to shake. But at the same time, it's happening. There's I can think of 5 to 7 artists or bands from India that have managed to break through, and those are the people younger artists in India will look up to now.
Yes,
so,
good point.
I think it needed for somebody to get out there and do it, and a fair number of people are on the way to being able to do that now. So yeah, but to answer your question, that is going to continue being a massive challenge, just purely because Bollywood, in terms of size, is massive. It just doesn't get better than that.
Right.
Doesn't get bigger than that.
Right,
Definitely gets a lot better than that.
Let me ask you about your YouTube and the prominence of that, because your label YouTube channel is really well done and it has a lot of plays. What's your strategy with YouTube, and what role does that play for your label?
So, Scott, I honestly look at us more as an artist development company.
Okay.
Like I was saying. So, and it's always been like that, because everybody on our roster we manage, but we don't release music as a label by everyone that we manage. So it's more an artist development company. And going back to something I'd said earlier on, is the fact that I felt like it was crucial for us to also fulfill that role early on, to be able to have the kind of impact we wanted to, because those aspects of the music business are still very much in development in India, especially when it comes to independent music. There's only a handful of management agencies, only a handful of indie labels, and all of them have massive challenges because funds are hard to come by. I can't think of a single booking agency in India that functions solely as a booking agency. I can't think of a single PR company that functions solely, so it's that kind of landscape that you need for artists. For example, in other established markets, there's people at every stage of an artist's career. So, you could be grassroots and you can find a manager and booking agency who works with artists at the grassroots level.
Okay.
You could progress. So, for example, you start out at coffee shops and then you progress to, 100 capacity rooms, and then 200, then 300, 400, 500. And that's how you sort of gauge success, is how many tickets you can sell and how much music is being streamed and how many views, etc., in a tangible way. Mm-hmm. But the great thing about developed markets is, as an artist, you can find, or you can build a team around you at each one of these stages.
Right, that is cool.
But in India, that's not a reality yet.
Okay.
So at the time we were putting out the first record, there was literally nobody I could go to in terms of a label that might want to invest in it, or a booking agent that might want to book some shows for us, or a publicist, or anybody in that sort of immediate team or support network that you need for an artist. It wasn't available. So I had to do everything, whether I wanted to or not.
Sure.
And that's where the actual need for a label arose. Before that, it was in my head, it was cool to have a label, and I decided that I would call this company Pagal Haina and whatnot. But it was still early days and I was still figuring it out. And in my head, it was, cool, it'd be nice to have a label. But for me, I've always thought more from a management and development mindset. And as a consequence of thinking from that mindset, I felt the need to be able to fulfill these roles also if we wanted to have a certain kind of impact with these releases. So it was born out of necessity. And over the years, it sort of stayed like that in terms of, we've definitely put out some records that we've invested a little bit into as a label, but I've also worked on a bunch of releases purely from a label services standpoint, where it was things that we had to do, for which we sort of built a fee into what we would make. But essentially, I think of us as an artist development company.
Yeah, I notice a lot of the kind of the skills that you or the people with your label have when it comes to the technical skills. I mean, your website and the visual skills, like the design is very nice. The aesthetic is consistent on your Spotify playlists. Everything looks really good. I knew when I was clicking through to the different, to your YouTube and to your Spotify and your Instagram, everything kind of shared a similar aesthetic. I mean, there has to be a lot of your film background and your visual skills that you've brought to the label too. Am I right?
Yeah. Well, firstly, thank you, Scott. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
But yeah, I think that has played a big role. In fact, if I were to think of it, I feel like everything that I did leading up to me making the decision of working in the music business has helped. And the funny thing is that back in the day, I did all of that without really having an end goal. It was just wanting to try different things.
Yeah.
So whether that was doing theater or working in film or television or working on events. I even worked for a sports management company for a bit. So I did a bunch of different things. And when I decided to work in the music business, I felt like, it was an amalgamation of everything that I'd done over the years and gained experience in. So, like, being on stage wasn't alien to me. Thinking about shows in terms of what sort of stage design do we want, what sort of lights do we want,
sure, yeah,
how we want the gig to sound, what sort of experience will it be for a ticket buyer from the point they buy the ticket to when they exit post the show. All of those things came from having worked in theater and being on stage a lot. The music video, live video side of things obviously came naturally because I'd spent a fair amount of time working in film as a producer and on the technical side of things as a sound designer or editor and so on and so forth. So worked in events, etc., and big, large-scale events. So I wasn't overawed by a lot of things that you would experience when starting out in the music business. So I felt like everything that I did in the past without worrying too much about what it would lead to ended up helping me in a big way because I felt like I was ready to be able to do it because I was able to sort of pick from all the different things I've done.
I think there is so much shared qualities in the entertainment industry, and so like just what you're talking about, from theater to film to live events to promoting music and records. I feel like if you have that understanding of caring about the user's experience, then I think that can really go a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that we've always focused on from day one is fans first. I think most decisions we've taken have been led by that question: is how will this benefit the fans and how are we giving back? And that was to me a major sort of guideline when it came to Prateek and everything that we've done. Post that is, paying a lot of attention to the artist-fan relationship and not taking anybody for granted and knowing that it's a give and take relationship. So you have to give as much as you expect in terms of, you can't always say, buy a ticket to my show, buy my music, watch my video. You have to give back for them to feel invested in an artist's life and career. Yes. I think it's important to get them on board at a early stage. And so building a mailing list and giving away free downloads and doing little pop-up concerts for a select few people. We've done a lot of those things along the way, which, in my opinion, really helped build a real connection with the early fans. And, once you're able to do that, then the fans are your biggest marketing team.
That's a great point.
So I think and that did stem from being able to think about it a certain way, because like I was saying, I felt like there were a lot of parallels to be drawn between being a producer for film or television and being a manager, because essentially you're trying to do the same things. It's just the format is different, but you're trying to build an audience. You're trying to find the funds to be able to get your piece of art out there. You're trying to market it in creative ways. So there's a lot of parallels in that sense.
I'm such a fan of your label. I really enjoyed going through the playlist, and I want to dig in more, especially the artists we talked about today. I love Ditty. What a beautiful record she released recently.
She's amazing.
So good. I just listened to Peter Cat today. That's a really interesting artist as well. Such a great roster.
Peter Cat is fantastic. In fact, they, to me, they're the best band that's come out of India so far. And I don't say that because I represent them now, but purely in terms of music and not being able to put them in a box.
Right.
I think they're. You'll hear a lot more about Peter Cat.
I think you're right.
In the years to come.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Spotify seems to love them. And I'm really excited to dive in. I want to ask you a super huge, big question before I let you go. And so I'm going to really put you on the spot. But can you identify any lesson that you've learned in this past 12 years, or any sort of philosophy that you've hung on to, or maybe if there, is a mistake that you'll never make again? Is there anything that kind of stands out to you? And again, I'm sorry for putting you on the spot.
I can definitely think of one. I think when in the early years of me working in the music business, I had a idealistic approach to things in terms of being compensated fairly, or putting pen to paper and having the agreements that you need in place and whatnot. After all the reading that I'd done and information that I'd come across, for some reason in the early days, I felt like there was something to be said about having a bit of a punk rock mentality and doing things basis trust, and giving each other the benefit of the doubt. And if you want to work together, you'll work together, and no piece of paper can make you work together or not make you work together.
Okay.
And I still feel like that to a small extent, but I've also come to learn that at the end of the day, the only... Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I lost you for a second.
Okay.
I felt like, but I've come to realize that at the end of the day, nobody will value you more than yourself.
Right.
In terms of, purely in terms of being able to do the work that you want to do with the passion and commitment that you have for it. But at the same time, you also have to have your own back and make sure that certain aspects of working in the business are taken care of, because over the years, and I'm sure that's something that you learn with experience, and you have to, you don't have to learn the hard way, but I guess a lot of people do learn the hard way. But if anybody ends up listening to this and decides that they're going to sign an agreement at the very beginning, then I'd be happy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's that. I think that's one learning that I have taken from my experience these past 8 years, is it's well and good to have great relationships and trust in each other and want to work with each other. But at the same time, it's important that you take care of the legal aspect of things, simply because music or the creative arts over a period of time can there's a lot of opinions, there's a lot of back and forth, especially when you're working with artists. You have to realize that somebody else's career is in your hands.
Yes.
And it's a lot more personal for them than it is for you, in the sense that you may put as many hours into somebody's career, but it's still not yours.
Right. Yeah.
It's you're representing somebody else, and everybody has their own sensibility, and there's pros and cons to everything. But it's a safe bet to take the time, energy, effort, and money it requires to be able to put those things in place. Because from that point on, obviously everyone operates with the assumption that things will go well and you will grow together and lots of good will come of it. But things can also go south, because that's just what life is.
That is really great advice, to take yourself seriously right from the beginning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to have your own back. That's what I like to say. Because at the end of the day, nobody is really looking out for you more than you can, And that doesn't have to reflect on anything but the fact that at the end of the day, you're responsible for your own well-being. And
that's so good.
That can be mental, that can be financial, that can be various things. But I think it's important to attach value to your time and energy from an early stage, so that if, God forbid, things do go wrong, at least you have put the measures in place that will safeguard your future to an extent.
That's great advice. Dhruv, I've enjoyed speaking with you so much. This has been so much fun. I love your label. Congratulations on all the success. I think it's so incredible.
Thank you so much, Scott. I appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time to reach out and having this conversation, and hope to be in touch.
And thank you all for listening. Let me tell you how you can find out about this label. The label is spelled Pagalhina, Pagal Haina. And you can find more about them at pagalhina.com. They're on Instagram. I have a great YouTube channel as well, and they do some incredible Spotify playlists. So dive into their catalog and learn from them. I hope you enjoyed this interview. Visit our website, otherrecordlabels.com, for resources and to contact myself and anything else. Thank you so much for listening.